Hey, I'm John. Today we're going to be using Parafilm to mask a canopy. Parafilm is a slightly waxy plastic type media that you can use in masking a canopy that allows you to cut away the masking from the frame lines, paint it, and then remove the masking later, and everything's nice and neat, and it doesn't leave behind any residue that's difficult to deal with. To use this, you're going to first want a roll of Parafilm. I get mine at an online store called Micromark. There are other sources of it. I've seen it on Amazon. Some model supply places have it. I don't know of an equivalent from other manufacturers or other companies. This may be something that Pacini Plastic Packaging has a trademark on. I don't know. But this is what I use, and it's very effective. You're also going to want your hobby knife with a sharp blade in it. And by sharp, I mean brand new. This stuff, while it cuts easily, if your knife blade isn't new, it doesn't cut well. It may skip along, it may leave little gaps in it, and you won't get optimal performance if you're not using a new hobby knife blade. I like to keep a Q-tip or a cotton bud handy just to help burnish things down. Usually my finger pressure is enough, but sometimes to get into a little corner, I like to have that handy. Same thing with a toothpick. I like to have that just in case I need to burnish down something in a corner of the canopy. Now, the canopy I'm going to be working with today doesn't have many little corners to worry about, so I probably won't need either one of these. This is the canopy from Bandai's 1/72nd scale B-Wing Fighter. It's got fairly simple canopy framing, and the edges are nicely raised, so it should be fairly simple to work with. One thing that's unusual, and I give Bandai credit for this, and I wish other aircraft or other model makers would do this, especially aircraft, is they put the canopy framing on the inside too, which is nice. If you want to have the canopy open, you can actually mask on the inside, paint the frame, and it looks right. On most models, the canopy framing is only on the outside. And while you can mask the inside, it's a bit hit or miss. And if you have the canopy open and you've painted the canopy framing on the outside, with it open, the paint on the inside that shows through looks glossy. And it's just a bit weird. So, good job on this, Bandai, and for the rest of the world, why can't you do it? This proves it's possible. Don't let me down, Edward. All right, to get started, you just need a slice off of your Parafilm, which I will do now. Set that aside, and you remove the paper backing. And there's our Parafilm. Now the next step is really simple. You stretch it. You'll know you stretched it enough when you don't see, on the edges, you'll see how the difference is where I gripped it. You'll see that it's still like it was in its unstretched state. The middle should be fully stretched. There shouldn't be any little sections that aren't stretched. Just pull it apart to stretch it. Then lay it over the canopy. Notice that I didn't stretch it over the canopy. I didn't pull it tight down over the canopy. I've just laid it over the canopy. Then you use your finger to begin burnishing it down. Make sure you hold the canopy underneath firmly, because I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on this. And you don't want to split the canopy. I've done that a time or two, and it's sadness. You do not want to do that. The heat from your fingers seems to make the parafilm cling to the canopy. Now what I do is I just go around with my knife and I cut away the excess. Not right up to the edge, just close enough that I don't have so much hanging off, and I'll show you why I do that. Now, to make sure it all stays burnished down nicely and it's all tight, I tuck it up under the edge. Because it's clear, you'll still be able to see through the parafilm to make your cuts. There. Now everything's pushed down pretty well. As you're looking at it, you may notice a few little bubbles in there. As you burnish it down, it may form bubbles. Don't worry about that. Once you start cutting, you can make a slice near one of the bubbles and then push the air out from underneath it and work any additional bubbles towards that cut. When you're done, you shouldn't see any visible wrinkles or bubbles that are too large. Your canopy should look about like that. Next, I'm going to start making the cuts. The way that I like to do this is to make sure that generally I'm using the tip of my hobby knife and that I do it at about a 45-degree angle into the corner of the canopy frame. So between holding the knife and holding the canopy, I try to get in that little groove where the canopy framing is. Now, this may be a little difficult for me to do on camera because I'm having to use my optivisor because I'm old and don't see well. But I start by cutting the edges. And I try to make sure to do each cut in a single pass. And after I've made the cut, I push down on it just a bit. If the parafilm starts lifting while you're making the cut, just stop, push it down, and then start again. I also try to make the cut beyond the edge of the canopy. I don't go right to the corner. I go a little bit past it so that when I make the next cut from the other side, from the other angle, it will go right through my previous cut, and when I pull the parafilm off, it should lift nice and clean. The good thing about doing this is when you're finished, when you're lifting the parafilm off to expose the canopy frames, if you get a little section that's just a little wonky, it's not quite as clean as you want, it's really easy just to add a small section of parafilm right in that section and cut just that section. Notice that I'm doing a single layer of parafilm. When I first started using parafilm, I read a how-to that said you must use 2 layers. And so I dutifully started using 2 layers. But being a bit of a rebel, I thought, well, what happens if I just use 1? And I found out that the universe did not stop, and everything went well using just one. Now your mileage may vary, and you may decide you like using 2 layers, which is just fine. Parafilm, a single roll, I think is around $12 to $15 if I recall correctly. It will last you for many, many models. In the course of building 275 aircraft models, all of which had some level of masking, I think I've gone through 3 rolls. And I use it for other things. Sometimes I use it to mask off areas of a model that I'm painting, because it's a quick way to do masking and not have to use a lot of masking tape if you just need to wrap an area. But use it 1 or 2 layers, whatever suits you, because most of the time you're not going to run out of it soon. It's a good value in terms of cost per square inch, I guess you'd say. If a cut starts going where you don't want it to go, lift the knife, start back at the corner, and recut it. Parafilm's forgiving enough that you can start a cut over, and it should let you get away with it. You have to examine it once you're done. Now, I think I've made all the cuts. Normally when I'm doing this, I'm thinking about it. I'm not trying to do it and talk. So that's made it a little more difficult for me. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But now I just simply grab it from the edge and start pulling it away. Pull it away slowly so that if any cut isn't complete, it'll start lifting. And you can stop and redo the cut. Now, I pulled it away so that it left the canopy framing covered along here, but it's completely gone from the outside perimeter edges, except for right here. Now that looks like it wants to lift again, so let me redo the cut right there. And this demonstrates how forgiving this stuff is. It'll show you where it doesn't want to lift, where it's going to give you some trouble. So you can go in and clean it up. See right there, it started to lift up. And I just burnish it back down. Now for these interior canopy frame parts, or this part here, not interior inside, but interior within the area that I'm masking, I'm just going to grab that up with the tip of my hobby knife, pull that out. You see where the double cut was? See how that snagged? But yet it worked. See that? I don't know if you noticed when I tried to lift that up, this section that I want to keep masked started to come up. So I'm going to do another cut all the way down. Make sure that's a good clean cut all the way through. And now I can lift that right off. And what we're left with is a nicely masked canopy. That finished, our canopy is ready for mounting on the model and then painting. A few notes about the follow-on steps. Depending on how it's mounted on the model, you can either go ahead and glue it on and paint it with the model, which is optimal because it then is weathered and colored exactly like the model. If it's maybe a sliding portion or an opening portion and it doesn't fit as well, you can set it to the side and paint it separately and add it later to the model. I would recommend that you take some Tamiya tape, and let me do this real quick and show you. Just take some Tamiya tape or other modeling tape and stick it to the inside. Of course, you do another piece to get this side over here, just to keep any paint from getting up under it. And then when you're done, you just yank it out. You have a nice clean canopy. I've used acrylic paints over parafilm. I've used enamels over parafilm. I've even used lacquer paints over parafilm. And that lacquer paint I've thinned with both what most of the world calls lacquer thinner, such as Mr. Color leveling thinner, Mr. Color, those types of thinners. But I've also used it with what we here in the US call lacquer thinner, which I think the rest of the world calls cellulose thinners. If you're going to do that, you don't want to flood the surface. You really have to mist it on. Too much cellulose thinner, while it will bite into the canopy frame really nice and it will adhere well and goes on really smooth, if you flood it onto the parafilm, it will start to wrinkle up a bit. I've misted it on and it doesn't cause any problems. I've also applied multiple coats of things over parafilm. So I'll put some paint, I'll put some future, I may do some weathering over it. All of those things can go over it. It generally will still come up very easily. To lift it up afterwards, I just grab a cocktail stick, a toothpick, and I lift up the corner very gently. Usually I can then take a pair of tweezers and pull it off. Sometimes the material that I've put over it will make it a bit sticky in terms of it coming off of the canopy, and so you have to nudge it along with the toothpick, but it'll come off. If there is any residue once you've lifted it off, simply take a cotton bud and buff it. It'll come right off. You don't need any kind of crazy lighter fluid or soapy water or anything like that. Just buff it off with a cotton bud, and it works very nicely. There are other materials to mask your canopy with. I've used bare metal foil, I've used tape, I've used commercial canopy masks. All of them have their benefits, all of them work, but for me, Parafilm has been the best performing product overall for just about every model I've built. It's been good for just about every model I've built, so I like using it. Give it a try. Practice with it a little bit. If you have some spare canopies laying around and want to work with them a little bit, do that. It's not difficult to use. It's simple enough that it's the kind of thing that you can usually pick up on your first try. You'll quickly see any idiosyncrasies in terms of bubbles or things like that that I mentioned earlier. When they do pop up, they'll be fairly easy to deal with. So it's a fast learning product. But that's how I mask my canopies, with Parafilm, and I find that it works really nice. It's cost effective, it's neat, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of residue behind on the canopy itself. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you for watching. Please do look in the description below. I've got some links there for my Facebook page, my website, and my Patreon channel. This video is free on YouTube. I do have longer, more extended videos that go into depth on building the models that I work on. Those are available to Patreon subscribers. So if you're interested in that, please go take a look and see what's there. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I always love hearing from folks. And thank you so much for reading my blog, for watching this video, and for your support and encouragement. Have a great day. Happy day to you.